My name is Cordelia. I'm 28, and I thought I knew my family until the day of my sister's wedding, when my own parents kicked me out of the house I had secretly bought for them 3 years ago. Standing on the porch steps in my bridesmaid dress, clutching my purse, while neighbors stared, I realized the golden child versus scapegoat dynamic had reached a breaking point that would destroy everything I thought I knew about blood, loyalty, sacrifice, and the true meaning of family. Hey everyone! Before we dive into this wild family drama that'll make your jaw drop, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? If stories about family betrayal and shocking revelations get your heart racing like mine, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because this tale of sisterly rivalry and parental favoritism is about to take some seriously unexpected turns that'll leave you questioning everything about family loyalty. Growing up, the Sinclair family dynamic was crystal clear. My younger sister Magnolia was the sun, and I was merely a planet orbiting in her shadow. From the moment she took her first breath 18 months after mine, our parents treated her like she was made of spun gold, while I became the responsible, invisible older sister who existed to make everyone else's life easier. Mom would light up whenever Magnolia entered a room, her voice taking on this sing-song quality that never appeared when she spoke to me. "There's my beautiful baby girl," she'd coo even when Magnolia was 16 and rolling her eyes. Meanwhile, I'd get a distracted nod and maybe a "Cordelia, did you finish your homework?" Dad wasn't much better. He'd beam with pride at Magnolia's mediocre report cards while barely glancing at my straight A's. The pattern continued through our teenage years. When Magnolia wanted to quit violin after 2 months because it was too hard, Mom immediately signed her up for dance classes instead. When I begged for art lessons, showing them my sketches and paintings, Dad said we couldn't afford it. This was the same week they bought Magnolia a brand new iPhone because she'd dropped hers in the school fountain while taking selfies. College applications revealed the depth of their favoritism. They emptied their savings account to send Magnolia to an expensive private university for her communications degree, while I worked 3 jobs to put myself through state school for my accounting degree. "You're so responsible, Cordelia," Mom would say with a dismissive wave. "You'll figure it out, you always do." It wasn't a compliment, it was an excuse to focus all their energy and resources on their precious baby. The worst part was how they gaslit me whenever I tried to address the inequality. "We love you both the same," Dad would insist, even as he handed Magnolia another check to cover her sorority dues. "You're just more independent. Magnolia needs more help." But I saw through their justifications. I wasn't more independent by choice. I'd been forced to become self-sufficient because they were too busy enabling their favorite daughter to notice I existed. After graduation, the pattern intensified. Magnolia moved back home rent-free while I struggled to afford a studio apartment. She worked part-time at a boutique while pursuing her influencer dreams, funded entirely by our parents, while I climbed the corporate ladder at a mid-sized accounting firm through sheer determination and 60-hour work weeks. By age 25, I'd saved enough money for a down payment on a house. But instead of buying something for myself, I made a decision that would later haunt me. I purchased a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs and told my parents it was a gift. Their aging rental was falling apart, and I couldn't bear watching them struggle with repairs and rising rent despite their favoritism. "You bought this for us." Mom had tears in her eyes as she walked through the spacious kitchen with granite countertops and stainless steel appliances. For the first time in my life, I felt like I'd earned their love and appreciation. Dad hugged me tight, whispering "Thank you, sweetheart" in my ear, and I thought maybe, just maybe, things would finally change between us. I was so naive. When Magnolia announced her engagement to Trevor, a trust fund baby she'd met at a wine tasting event, the wedding planning became a full-scale military operation with our parents as commanding officers and me as the unpaid enlisted soldier expected to follow orders without question. "We need to make this perfect for Magnolia," Mom declared during our first family meeting about the wedding. "This is going to be the social event of the year." The way she said it, you'd think we were planning a royal wedding instead of a backyard ceremony for 150 people. But that was classic Mom. Everything involving Magnolia had to be elevated to epic proportions. The guest list alone sparked the first major conflict. Magnolia wanted to invite her entire sorority, half of Instagram, and several influencers she'd never actually met but considered friends because they'd liked her posts. Meanwhile, my college roommate Sarah, who'd been like a sister to me for years, didn't make the cut because Magnolia claimed they didn't vibe. Translation: Sarah had once mentioned that Magnolia's constant selfie-taking at a family dinner was rude. "It's her day," Dad reminded me when I protested. "We need to respect Magnolia's wishes." But when I asked if I could bring my boyfriend Marcus, who I'd been dating for 8 months, Magnolia immediately vetoed it. "I don't really know him," she said with a shrug. "Plus, we're trying to keep it intimate." Intimate apparently meant excluding my significant other, while including her yoga instructor and the barista from her favorite coffee shop. The financial expectations were even more staggering. Despite having a perfectly good backyard in the house I'd bought them, Mom and Dad decided to rent a country club venue because Magnolia fell in love with their garden pavilion. The photographer alone cost more than most people's cars, and the florist's estimate made my accounting brain spin. When I gently suggested some cost-cutting measures, Mom looked at me like I'd suggested serving gas station hot dogs. "This is Magnolia's dream wedding," she said firmly. "We're not cutting corners." But when it came time to discuss who would pay for this dream, suddenly everyone remembered I was the successful one, with the good job. The hints started small. Mom mentioning how stressed Dad was about finances, casual comments about my generous nature, and finally the direct ask. "Cordelia, honey," Dad approached me one evening while I was reviewing vendor contracts at their kitchen table. "You've always been so responsible with money. We were wondering if you might consider helping with some of the wedding expenses as an investment in your sister's happiness." The amount they requested was breathtaking, nearly $30,000 to cover the venue catering and photography. It was more money than most people saw in a year, and they asked for it as casually as borrowing $20 for lunch. When I hesitated, explaining that I'd already stretched my budget buying their house, Mom's expression hardened. "We thought you'd want to contribute to your sister's special day," she said coolly. "Family helps family, Cordelia. That's what love looks like." The guilt trip was masterful. Suddenly, my reluctance to fund their extravaganza became evidence that I didn't love my sister enough. They even had Magnolia call me crying, sobbing about how her dream wedding was going to be ruined if I didn't help, so I did what I always did. I sacrificed my own financial security for their happiness. I liquidated my emergency fund, cashed out part of my 401k early, and took on a second job doing weekend tax preparation to cover the payments. The stress was overwhelming, but seeing Magnolia's excitement made it feel worthwhile. She actually hugged me when I told her I'd cover the costs, saying, "You're the best big sister ever." It was one of the few times in our adult lives she'd shown me genuine affection. What I didn't know was that while I was working myself to exhaustion to pay for her perfect day, Magnolia was busy planning something that would shatter our family forever. The morning of Magnolia's wedding dawned crisp and clear, with golden sunlight streaming through the windows of the house I'd bought for our parents. I woke up at 5 a.m. in my childhood bedroom, my stomach churning with a mixture of excitement and exhaustion from the months of wedding preparation. As the maid of honor, I had a packed schedule of responsibilities, but I was determined to make this day perfect for my sister. I started with coffee and a light breakfast, then immediately dove into coordination mode. The hair and makeup team arrived at 7 a.m., transforming our parents' living room into a salon. Magnolia naturally went first, settling into the makeup chair like a queen claiming her throne. As I watched the artist work on her flawless face, applying layer after layer of products to make her look like a bridal magazine cover, I felt that familiar pang of being the supporting character in someone else's story. "Cordelia, can you call the florist?" Magnolia asked without taking her eyes off her reflection. "I want to make sure they're using the right shade of blush pink for the centerpieces." Her tone was casual, but I recognized the underlying command. Even on her wedding day, I was still the family coordinator, the one who handled the details while she focused on being beautiful. The day proceeded in a whirlwind of controlled chaos. I coordinated vendor arrivals, managed the bridesmaids' questions, helped Mom into her mother of the bride dress, and ensured Dad had his boutonniere pinned correctly. Through it all, I felt this strange undercurrent of tension that I couldn't quite identify. Mom and Dad seemed unusually nervous, whispering to each other in corners and checking their phones more frequently than normal. Around noon, while Magnolia was getting her hair styled into an elaborate updo, I overheard a conversation that made my blood run cold. I was coming back from the kitchen with champagne for the bridal party when I heard Dad on the phone in his study door slightly ajar. "No, we can't postpone it any longer," he was saying in a hushed, urgent tone. "After today, it'll be done. Magnolia will have what she deserves." There was a pause, then "Cordelia won't be a problem. She's too loyal to cause trouble, and after this she won't have any choice but to accept it." My heart started pounding as the implications sank in. They were planning something involving me, something they expected me to simply accept because of my history of compliance. I pressed myself against the hallway wall, straining to hear more, but Dad's voice dropped even lower. All I caught were fragments: "Inheritance, fair share, and most chillingly, she'll understand eventually." The champagne flutes trembled in my hands as I made my way back to the bridal suite, my mind racing with possibilities. What could they possibly be planning that required my absence and my acceptance, and why did it involve Magnolia getting what she deserved? The ceremony itself passed in a blur of forced smiles and rising anxiety. I walked down the aisle in my dusty rose bridesmaid dress, watching our guests beam at the picture-perfect scene, completely unaware of the family drama brewing beneath the surface. Magnolia looked absolutely stunning in her designer gown, and Trevor seemed genuinely besotted with his bride. For a moment I tried to push aside my fears and focus on my sister's happiness, but during the reception, the strange behavior intensified. Mom and Dad kept exchanging meaningful looks, and several times I caught them having whispered conversations with Magnolia that stopped abruptly when I approached. My sister, normally attention-seeking and dramatic, seemed oddly subdued despite being the center of attention. She kept glancing at our parents with an expression I couldn't read: nervous, guilty, excited. The breaking point came during the father-daughter dance. As I watched Dad spin Magnolia around the dance floor, both of them glowing with joy, I felt tears prick my eyes. Despite everything, despite the favoritism and the financial burden and the constant feeling of being second best, I loved my family. I'd sacrificed so much to give Magnolia this perfect day, to buy our parents a beautiful home, to be the responsible daughter who held everything together. That's when Mom appeared beside me, her hand gently touching my arm. "Cordelia, honey," she said softly, "we need to talk. Can you come inside for a moment?" Her tone was gentle, almost apologetic, which immediately put me on high alert. Mom was never apologetic unless she was about to deliver bad news. If this story is hitting close to home and you've ever felt like the family scapegoat who gives everything but gets nothing in return, you're definitely not alone. Stick with me because what happens next will shock you, and the way karma comes full circle will leave you cheering. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this family betrayal gets exposed. Following Mom into the house, my heart hammered against my ribs as we walked through the beautifully decorated rooms that I'd unknowingly purchased for what was about to become my own destruction. Dad was waiting in the living room with a manila folder in his hands and an expression that mixed guilt with determination. Magnolia appeared moments later, having slipped away from her own reception, still in her wedding dress but with a look of steely resolve that I'd never seen before. "Sit down, honey," Mom said, gesturing to the couch. But I remained standing, every instinct screaming that whatever was coming would be easier to handle on my feet. The three of them arranged themselves across from me like a tribunal, and I felt like a defendant about to receive a verdict I'd never seen coming. Dad cleared his throat and opened the folder. "Cordelia, we need to discuss some changes to our living situation," he began, his voice formal and distant. "We've been thinking about this for a long time and we believe it's what's best for everyone." What kind of changes, I asked, though part of me already knew this conversation would shatter everything I thought I understood about our family. Magnolia stepped forward, her wedding dress rustling softly. "We know you bought this house for Mom and Dad," she said, her voice steady but her eyes avoiding mine. "And we're grateful, we really are. But things are different now. I'm married, I'm starting a new life, and Trevor and I need a place to build our future." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What are you saying?" Dad pulled out a stack of legal documents. "We've had lawyers draw up papers transferring ownership of the house to Magnolia. Since you gave it to us as a gift, it became our property and we have the right to decide what happens to it. We're signing it over to your sister as her wedding present." I stared at them in disbelief. "You're giving away the house I bought you to Magnolia. Trevor's family has significant business connections," Mom explained, as if that justified anything. "They need to live somewhere befitting their social status. This house in this neighborhood, it's perfect for them to start their married life. You understand, don't you? You've always been so practical about these things." The betrayal was so complete, so calculated that I couldn't even process it fully. "Where are you going to live?" "Trevor's parents have a beautiful guest house on their estate," Magnolia said, finally meeting my eyes. "They've invited Mom and Dad to live there. It's actually much nicer than this place. A pool, gardens, full-time staff. They'll be so much happier." "And what about me?" I whispered, though I was beginning to understand exactly where I fit into their new arrangement. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Dad spoke. "Well, you have your apartment. You've always been independent. You'll be fine. Your apartment that you can barely afford because you spent all your money on this house and my wedding," Magnolia added with devastating honesty. "Look, Cordelia, you've always been the strong one. You don't need us taking care of you like we need to take care of each other." I felt like I was drowning in their casual cruelty. "You're kicking me out of the house I bought you on your wedding day to give it to the sister who's never worked a day in her life." "We're not kicking you out," Mom protested weakly. "We're just redistributing resources more fairly. Magnolia is starting a family. She needs stability." "I gave you stability," the words exploded out of me. "I worked 3 jobs, I emptied my savings, I paid for this entire wedding. And this is how you repay me? We never asked you to buy us a house," Dad said coldly, and that's when I realized this had been planned long before today. "That was your choice. We never promised you anything in return." "But we are grateful," Magnolia added with that practiced sweetness she'd perfected over the years. "Which is why we've decided to let you keep some of the furniture from your old room as a thank you gift." The sheer audacity of offering me my childhood furniture from the house I'd purchased was so absurd that I actually laughed. A harsh, bitter sound, that seemed to surprise them all. Let me keep my furniture from the house I bought. How generous. There's no need to be dramatic, Mom said, her voice taking on that familiar edge of irritation she got whenever I didn't immediately comply with their plans. This is what's best for the family. Magnolia needs this house more than we do, and will be comfortable at the Hartwell estate. Everyone wins. Everyone except me. You'll be fine, Dad repeated firmly. You always land on your feet. You're resourceful. Standing there in my bridesmaid dress, surrounded by the family I'd sacrificed everything for, I finally understood the truth. I hadn't been their daughter. I'd been their ATM. I hadn't been Magnolia's sister. I'd been her unpaid assistant. And now that they'd extracted everything they could from me, they were discarding me like a used tissue. I need you to pack your things tonight, Magnolia said gently, as if she was doing me a favor. Trevor and I want to start our honeymoon here tomorrow, and it would be awkward if you were still around. The final insult. Not only were they stealing my house, they wanted me gone immediately so they could enjoy their theft without the inconvenience of facing their victim. That's when something inside me broke, but not in the way they expected. Something crystallized in that moment as I stood in the living room of the house I'd bought, surrounded by the family that had just systematically betrayed me. The grief and shock transformed into something much more powerful, a cold, calculating fury that gave me perfect clarity about what needed to happen next. You know what I said, my voice eerily calm. You're absolutely right. This is what's best for the family. But before I pack my things and disappear from your lives forever, I think your wedding guests deserve to know exactly what kind of family they're celebrating. The color drained from Magnolia's face. What do you mean? I mean it's time for some truth-telling. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my photos. See, the thing about being the responsible family member is that I keep very detailed records. Bank statements, receipts, legal documents, evidence. Dad stepped forward, his voice sharp with warning. Cordelia, don't do anything you'll regret. Regret, I laughed, the sound cutting through their growing panic. The only thing I regret is wasting 7 years of my life trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it. But that ends today. I walked toward the patio doors where I could see the reception still in full swing, guests laughing and dancing, completely unaware of the family drama unfolding inside. Did you know that your generous, loving parents never actually paid for this beautiful wedding? No, that honor went to the daughter they just kicked out of her own house. Stop, Magnolia hissed, grabbing my arm. You're being ridiculous. No one cares about the financial details. Oh, I think they'll care about a lot of details. I shook off her grip and kept walking. Like how the bride's parents have been living rent-free in a house purchased by the daughter they consider so unworthy that they're giving her property away as a wedding gift. Or how the beautiful bride has never held a job longer than 6 months because Mommy and Daddy fund her entire lifestyle. Mom rushed ahead of me, blocking the door. Please, Cordelia. Think about what you're doing. You'll embarrass the entire family. The family that just told me I don't belong in it, I asked sweetly. The family that planned this whole betrayal and expected me to just accept it with a smile. That family. Through the glass doors I could see Trevor's parents mingling with our relatives, their expensive clothes and practiced smiles, a stark contrast to our middle-class extended family. They had no idea they were about to inherit 2 more dependents, or that their son's new wife came with parents who specialized in financial manipulation. Let's think about this rationally, Dad said, switching to his negotiation voice. Maybe we moved too fast. We could discuss alternative arrangements. Alternative arrangements. I turned to face them, and whatever they saw in my expression made them all take a step back. You mean like you alternately arranged to not steal my house, or you alternately arranged to treat me like a human being instead of a bank account with legs? Magnolia's composure finally cracked. Fine, you want to throw a tantrum, go ahead, but remember, if you humiliate me on my wedding day, there's no coming back from that. You'll lose us forever. Lose you? I stared at her in amazement. Magnolia, you just stole my house. Mom and Dad just told me I'm not welcome in the family anymore unless I'm writing checks. What exactly am I losing? The privilege of being your unpaid servant for the rest of my life. The truth hung in the air between us like a toxic cloud. For the first time in our lives, there were no more pretenses, no more fake family harmony, no more lies about equal treatment. Just the raw reality of who they really were and how they really saw me. Your choice, I continued, pulling up my contact list on my phone. Option 1. You transfer the house back to me immediately. You pay me back every penny you've cost me over the years, and you publicly apologize to me in front of all your wedding guests. Option 2, I walk out there and tell everyone exactly who funded this fairy tale wedding and why the generous gift giver is being evicted from her own property. You wouldn't, Mom whispered, but her certainty was gone. Try me. I moved toward the door again. I've got nothing left to lose, remember, you made sure of that. Dad grabbed my shoulder, his grip tight enough to bruise. If you do this, you'll destroy more than just Magnolia's wedding. You'll destroy our relationship with the Hartwells. They're prominent people, Cordelia. This could ruin business opportunities, social connections. And that's my problem, how I shrugged off his hand. You should have thought about consequences before you decided to rob the person who's been bankrolling your lives for the past 3 years. Magnolia was crying now, her perfect wedding makeup streaking down her cheeks. Please, Cordelia. I know we handled this wrong, but it's my wedding day. Can't we figure this out tomorrow? For just a moment, looking at my sister's tears, I felt that old familiar tug of sympathy. The ingrained urge to protect her, to sacrifice my own needs for her happiness, to be the good big sister who fixed everything. It would be so easy to give in one more time, to let them have their perfect day and deal with the aftermath later. But then I remembered the coldness in Dad's voice when he said, "We never asked you to buy us a house." I remembered Mom's dismissive, "You'll be fine," when they told me I was homeless. I remembered Magnolia offering to let me keep my childhood furniture from my own house. "You know what, Magnolia," I said softly, "you're right. Today is your wedding day, and I think it's time everyone celebrated the real you." I reached for the door handle, and that's when all hell broke loose. What happened next was like watching dominoes fall in the most satisfying way possible. As I stepped onto the patio with my phone in hand, ready to address the crowd of wedding guests, Trevor's father approached me with a warm smile, completely oblivious to the family meltdown that had just occurred inside. "Cordelia, there you are," Mr. Hartwell said jovially. "I've been wanting to thank you personally for this wonderful celebration. Magnolia mentioned you were instrumental in making this day possible. Perfect timing." "Actually, Mr. Hartwell, I was just about to share some details about that with everyone," I replied loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "Would you mind gathering everyone? I have an announcement to make about the wedding arrangements." The panic behind me was palpable. I could hear Mom making strangled noises and Magnolia whispering frantically to Trevor, but I was done caring about their comfort. Mr. Hartwell, clearly delighted by what he assumed would be a heartfelt speech, immediately began calling guests to attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, the maid of honor would like to say a few words." As the crowd gathered, champagne glasses in hand and faces bright with wedding joy, I felt a moment of genuine sadness for what I was about to do. But then I caught sight of my parents lurking in the doorway, and Magnolia's tear-streaked face peering around Trevor's shoulder, and my resolve hardened. Thank you all for being here to celebrate my sister's special day. I began, my voice carrying clearly across the reception area. I wanted to share the real story behind this beautiful wedding because I believe in transparency and honesty, values that apparently aren't shared by everyone in my family. The crowd was smiling expectantly, but I noticed a few relatives starting to look concerned. My Aunt Janet, who'd always been perceptive, was already frowning. 3 years ago, I bought a house for my parents, I continued. Not because they asked, but because I loved them and wanted to give them security in their retirement. Today, on my sister's wedding day, they informed me that they're giving that house to Magnolia as a wedding present and asked me to move out by tonight. The gasps started immediately. Mr. Hartwell's smile faltered as he began to understand this wasn't going to be a typical maid of honor speech. But that's not even the best part, I said, warming to my subject. The $30,000 wedding you're all enjoying, the venue, the catering, the flowers, the photography, I paid for all of it. Every single penny, while working 2 jobs and emptying my savings account. And now I'm being rewarded for my generosity by being kicked out of my own house. The crowd was no longer smiling. Conversations were breaking out in shocked whispers, and I could see several people pulling out their phones. In the age of social media, this story would be everywhere within hours. Cordelia, stop. Magnolia finally found her voice, pushing through the crowd toward me. You're ruining everything. I'm ruining everything. I turned to face her, and the entire reception fell silent. Magnolia, you literally just stole my house and evicted me on your wedding day. I think you've got the monopoly on ruining things. That's when Uncle Robert, Dad's brother, stepped forward. Is this true, Tom? He demanded, his face red with anger. Did you really kick Cordelia out of a house she bought for you? Before Dad could answer, Aunt Janet chimed in. I knew something was off, Cordelia. Honey, you've been supporting them for years. We all knew it, even if we didn't say anything. The family secrets were tumbling out now like water through a broken dam. Cousin Lisa mentioned the time she'd offered to help with Mom's medical bills, only to be told Cordelia was handling it. Uncle Mike brought up how suspicious it was that my parents had suddenly moved into such an expensive neighborhood on Dad's pension. This is a private family matter, Mom said desperately, finally emerging from the house. Please, everyone, let's not let this spoil Magnolia's special day. Her special day that was funded by theft, Aunt Janet shot back. Tom, Linda, I am ashamed of you both. But the real fireworks came when Mr. Hartwell stepped forward, his businessman's mind quickly calculating the implications. Let me understand this correctly, he said slowly. You've been living in a house purchased by your daughter, who also funded this entire wedding, and your response was to give her property away and make her homeless. It's complicated, Dad started weakly. No, it's not complicated at all, Mr. Hartwell replied coldly. It's theft and elder abuse in reverse. And you expected to come live with us after pulling this stunt, he turned to his son. Trevor, I think you and I need to have a serious conversation about your new in-laws. The color drained from Magnolia's face as she realized her fairy tale ending was crumbling in real time. Mr. Hartwell, please, this is just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, he looked at her with newfound clarity. Young lady, if this is how your family treats loyalty and generosity, I have serious concerns about what kind of values you'll bring to our family. That's when the most beautiful part happened. My phone, which I'd been holding throughout this entire confrontation, suddenly rang. It was Marcus, my boyfriend, who hadn't been invited to the wedding. I answered it on speaker. Cordelia, baby, are you okay? Your friend Sarah just saw something on social media about your family drama. She said people are posting videos of you exposing your sister at her wedding. The crowd looked around in amazement as they realized this whole confrontation was already going viral. Someone had been live streaming, and the story of the sister who bought her parents a house only to be evicted at her sister's wedding was spreading across the internet like wildfire. "I'm fine, Marcus," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Just setting some family records straight. Oh, and I might need a place to stay tonight since I've been made homeless by the people I bought a house for." "You can stay with me as long as you need," he replied immediately. "And Sarah wants you to know that her law firm specializes in property fraud cases. She thinks you might have some legal options." The mention of legal action sent Mom into full panic mode. "Cordelia, please let's discuss this privately. I'm sure we can work something out." But I was done with private discussions and family meetings that ended with me getting screwed over. "Actually, Mom, I think we've discussed enough. Everyone here knows the truth now. The question is what happens next." The answer came from the most unexpected source. Trevor, who'd been quietly listening to this entire exchange, suddenly spoke up. "Magnolia, we need to talk. Now." His voice was cold, and I could see him looking at his new wife like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. "Trevor, honey, let me explain," Magnolia started, but he cut her off. "Explain what? That you and your parents conspired to steal from your sister, that you're so entitled, you think kicking someone out of their own house is acceptable, that I just married into a family of thieves and con artists." The reception was completely silent now, except for the sound of phones buzzing as the story continued to spread online. Wedding guests were backing away from my family like they were contagious, and several people were already heading for the parking lot. And then came the final perfect moment of karma. Mr. Hartwell pulled out his own phone and made a call. "James, it's Richard Hartwell. Yes, I need you to draw up some paperwork immediately. My son's new in-laws will not be moving into the guest house after all. In fact, I want them trespassed from the property effective immediately." Mom actually collapsed into a chair at that announcement. Their backup plan, their safety net, their ticket to comfortable retirement, gone in an instant. "But where will we go?" Dad asked desperately. "I guess you'll have to figure it out," I said sweetly. "You're resourceful people. You always land on your feet, right? Isn't that what you told me?" As the reception dissolved into chaos around us, with guests leaving in droves and vendors wondering if they'd get paid, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Pure, undiluted satisfaction. Not happiness exactly, but the deep contentment that comes from finally standing up for yourself after a lifetime of being a doormat. 3 months later, the house was legally back in my name thanks to Sarah's legal expertise and the evidence I'd meticulously kept of all my financial contributions. My parents ended up in a cramped apartment, and Magnolia's marriage was annulled after Trevor discovered she'd been lying about other things too, including a secret credit card debt she'd been expecting him to pay off. The viral video of my wedding speech became a cautionary tale about family exploitation, and I received hundreds of messages from people sharing their own stories of being the family scapegoat. I realized I wasn't alone in my experience, and that gave me the courage to write a book about financial abuse within families. Marcus and I moved into the house together, and we're planning our own wedding, a small, intimate ceremony where everyone invited actually loves and respects both of us. My parents and Magnolia aren't on the guest list, but I'm surprisingly okay with that. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive, and some relationships aren't worth saving. The best part: 6 months after the wedding disaster, Magnolia tried to reconnect, claiming she'd learned from her mistakes and wanted to rebuild our relationship. But when she mentioned needing help with her rent in the same conversation, I knew nothing had really changed. Some people never learn. They just get better at manipulating. Speaking of learning, I'd love to know what you think about family loyalty versus self-respect. Have you ever been in a situation where family members took advantage of your generosity? How did you handle it? Drop a comment below and share your story. I read every single one and respond when I can. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life drama stories about justice, karma, and standing up for yourself. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that it's okay to put yourself first sometimes, even when it comes to family. Thank you all so much for watching and supporting me as I shared one of the most painful but ultimately liberating experiences of my life. Remember, you teach people how to treat you by what you're willing to accept. Sometimes the best thing you can do for toxic family members is show them that their behavior has consequences. Until next time, remember that you deserve respect, kindness, and honesty from the people who claim to love you. Don't settle for less, no matter how they're related to you. Take care, everyone.